Welcome, faithful friends and seekers of spiritual wisdom. Today we're sharing a powerful message about a simple practice that Pope Francis has emphasized throughout his papacy, one that could transform the way you protect your family spiritually. In a world filled with uncertainty and challenges, wouldn't it be comforting to know there's something you can do every day to surround your loved ones with divine protection? This is exactly what Pope Francis has been advocating for, the humble yet profound practice of praying the Rosary as a family. In numerous addresses to the faithful, Pope Francis has spoken about the Rosary not merely as a traditional Catholic devotion, but as a spiritual shield capable of bringing peace, unity, and protection to families worldwide. The Holy Father believes that when we take this simple string of beads in our hands with faith, we activate a powerful channel of grace that extends beyond ourselves to encompass those we love most. The Rosary has been a cornerstone of Catholic devotion for centuries, but what makes Pope Francis's message so compelling is how he connects this ancient practice to the modern family's needs. The family that prays together stays together. Pope Francis often quotes St. John Paul II, but he takes this wisdom further by explaining how the Rosary specifically creates a protective spiritual atmosphere within the home. You may be wondering, what exactly has the Pope said about the Rosary that makes it so special for family protection? According to Pope Francis, the Rosary serves as both a weapon and a shield against the forces that threaten to pull families apart in today's challenging times. He describes it as a prayer that always accompanies me. It is also the prayer of the ordinary people and the saints. It is a prayer from my heart. But here's what you might not know. Pope Francis doesn't just recommend praying the Rosary. He advises a specific approach that maximizes its protective power for families. You'll be amazed at what the Pope revealed about this simple gesture that transforms an ordinary prayer into an extraordinary source of grace for your entire household. The beauty of the Rosary lies in its simplicity. It doesn't require theological education or special training, just an open heart and willing hands. Pope Francis emphasizes that this accessibility makes it perfect for families of all backgrounds. Whether you're a lifelong Catholic or someone exploring the faith, the Rosary offers a pathway to divine protection that anyone can follow. When we look at the structure of the Rosary, we find a contemplative journey through the life of Christ, through the eyes of Mary. Each bead represents a prayer, and each prayer builds upon the last, creating a rhythm of devotion that Pope Francis describes as the beating heart of family life. As your fingers move from one bead to the next, you're not just reciting words, you're weaving a protective mantle around your loved ones. The Pope suggests beginning the practice by gathering the family together in a comfortable space, free from distractions. He emphasizes that consistency matters more than perfection. Even if you can only manage a decade of the Rosary, 10 Hail Marys prayed with sincerity, this small act plants seeds of faith that will grow with time. What's crucial is creating that sacred moment when family members unite in prayer, acknowledging their need for divine assistance and protection. Many families wonder how to make the Rosary engaging, especially for younger members who might struggle with attention spans. Pope Francis addresses this concern with practical wisdom. He suggests assigning each family member a role. Perhaps one person announces the mysteries, another leads the prayers, while others offer intentions. This participation creates a sense of ownership and engagement that keeps everyone connected to the prayer. There's something profoundly moving about hearing the Pope describe how his own relationship with the Rosary developed. He carries a rosary in his pocket, worn from years of faithful use. "I feel it," he once said, "when I need it." This personal testimony reminds us that the Rosary isn't just a ritual, it's a relationship, a conversation with heaven that becomes more meaningful with each recitation. Pope Francis particularly emphasizes praying the Rosary during times of family conflict or crisis. He believes that when communication breaks down between family members, the Rosary can speak a language that transcends human limitations. It creates a space where healing can begin, where hardened hearts can soften, in the presence of divine love. This aspect of the Rosary's power, its ability to restore harmony, makes it an essential practice for family protection. Consider the story Pope Francis often shares about a family in Buenos Aires. When their teenage son became involved with troubling influences, the parents felt powerless to reach him. In desperation, they began praying the Rosary each evening, simply holding the beads and offering their concerns to Mary. They didn't force their son to join, but they made their devotion visible. Within months, small changes began to appear. The son started asking questions about their prayer, occasionally sitting quietly in the room while they prayed, and eventually requested his own rosary. This gradual transformation didn't happen overnight, but the protective power of the Rosary slowly created a path back to family unity. This example illustrates what Pope Francis means when he speaks of the Rosary as a source of protection. It's not a magical shield that prevents all problems. Rather, it's a spiritual practice that builds resilience, faith, and connection, equipping families to face challenges together with divine assistance. The Holy Father specifically recommends praying the Rosary in the evening when possible, creating a gentle conclusion to the day's activities. As darkness falls outside, the family creates light within through shared prayer. This evening ritual signals to children that no matter what happened during the day, successes or failures, joys or sorrows, the family remains united under God's care. The rhythm of nightly prayer establishes security and constancy in a world often characterized by rapid change and uncertainty. Pope Francis also speaks about the physical arrangement of the family during Rosary prayer. He suggests, when possible, creating a small prayer area with meaningful religious items, perhaps an image of the Holy Family, a crucifix, or a candle. These visible reminders help focus attention and create a sacred atmosphere. The Pope emphasizes that this doesn't need to be elaborate. Even the simplest arrangement communicates that this space and time are set apart for connection with the divine. One particularly moving aspect of the Pope's teaching on the Rosary concerns those families separated by distance, illness, or conflict. He reminds us that when family members pray the Rosary individually, thinking of their loved ones, they create spiritual bridges that transcend physical limitations. A mother praying her Rosary in one country remains connected to her child studying abroad. Siblings who have lost touch can find reunion through parallel devotion. This invisible communion makes the Rosary especially powerful for modern families often scattered by the demands of contemporary life. The Rosary, according to Pope Francis, also serves as an intergenerational connection. When children learn to pray the Rosary from parents or grandparents, they receive more than a prayer, they inherit a spiritual legacy. The Pope encourages elders to share stories of how the Rosary has protected and guided their own lives, creating a living testimony that strengthens family faith. These narratives help younger generations understand that they're part of a continuing story of divine protection. There's a simplicity to the way Pope Francis explains the Rosary's protective power that resonates with people regardless of their theological background. He describes the beads as links in a chain, connecting heaven and earth, family members to each other, and present concerns to eternal promises. This imagery helps us understand how something as straightforward as moving beads through our fingers can have such profound spiritual implications. What makes the Pope's message particularly touching is his emphasis on praying the Rosary with, and for those family members who may have drifted from faith. He encourages parents and grandparents never to stop holding their children in prayer, especially through the Rosary. "Your prayers are more powerful than you know," he often says, offering hope to those who watch loved ones struggle with doubt or indifference to spiritual matters. The protection offered by the Rosary extends beyond spiritual concerns to the practical challenges families face. Pope Francis points out that families who pray the Rosary together often develop greater patience, forgiveness, and understanding, qualities essential for navigating daily difficulties. The contemplative nature of the Rosary, with its focus on the life of Christ, provides models for handling conflict, suffering, joy, and fulfillment that families can apply to their own circumstances. Perhaps you've tried praying the Rosary before, but struggled with distractions or doubts about its effectiveness. Pope Francis addresses these common concerns with characteristic compassion. He reminds us that even distracted prayer is valuable when offered sincerely. The very act of picking up the Rosary signals a willingness to connect with the divine, and this openness itself begins the protective process. Growth in prayer comes with practice, just as any relationship deepens with regular attention and care. One beautiful tradition Pope Francis suggests is having each family member take turns leading a decade of the Rosary, offering their own intentions before beginning. This practice helps personalize the prayer and ensures that individual concerns receive attention. A child might pray for help with a difficult subject at school. A parent might seek guidance for a workplace challenge. A grandparent might offer prayers for healing. When voiced within the family Rosary, these intentions become shared concerns, multiplying the spiritual support each person receives. The Pope also speaks about the timing of the family Rosary in terms of liturgical seasons. While daily prayer forms the foundation, he encourages special attention to the Rosary during Advent, Lent, and Marian months like May and October. These seasons provide opportunities to deepen family devotion and explore different aspects of the mysteries. For example, focusing on the sorrowful mysteries during Lent helps families connect with Christ's sacrifice, while the joyful mysteries bring the wonder of Christmas to life during Advent. When we examine the specific method Pope Francis recommends for praying the Rosary as protection for the family, several key elements emerge. First is intentionality, consciously dedicating the prayer for family protection rather than seeing it as routine. Second is consistency, establishing a regular rhythm that family members can rely upon. Third is inclusion, finding ways to involve everyone, regardless of age or spiritual maturity. Fourth is growth, gradually increasing understanding of the mysteries being contemplated. Finally, there's application, connecting insights from prayer to daily family interactions. The physical Rosary itself holds significance in the Pope's teaching. He encourages families to select rosaries that hold meaning, perhaps passed down through generations, received at important sacramental moments, or brought from significant pilgrimage sites. These tangible connections enhance the prayer experience and create what Pope Francis calls sacramentals of family history, objects that carry spiritual significance through their connection to family faith journeys. Some families have asked whether technology can play a role in the Rosary prayer Pope Francis recommends. While emphasizing the value of traditional beads when possible, the Holy Father acknowledges that digital Rosary apps can help modern families maintain the practice, especially when travel or circumstances prevent access to physical rosaries. What matters most is the heart's engagement, not the specific method. This flexibility makes the protection of the Rosary accessible even in our technology-driven world. Pope Francis places special emphasis on praying for family members facing particular challenges. He suggests adapting the Rosary to address specific needs. perhaps focusing intentions on a child facing difficult decisions, a spouse experiencing workplace stress, or a relative struggling with illness. This targeted prayer demonstrates love in action and creates a spiritual safety net for vulnerable family members. The protection offered through the Rosary, in Pope Francis's understanding, isn't passive. It actively strengthens family members to make better choices, resist negative influences, and recognize opportunities for growth. He describes it as illumination that helps families see circumstances through the light of faith rather than being overwhelmed by immediate appearances. This discernment becomes increasingly important as families navigate complex moral terrain in contemporary culture. You might wonder how the Rosary specifically protects children in today's challenging environment. Pope Francis addresses this concern directly, noting that children who witness their parents' devotion absorb lasting impressions of faith's importance. Even before they fully understand the prayers or mysteries, they grasp that something significant is happening. This early exposure creates what the Pope calls spiritual immunities that help young people distinguish truth from falsehood as they mature. The Rosary's repetitive nature, sometimes criticized as monotonous, is actually part of its protective power, according to Pope Francis. He compares it to the repetitive expressions of love between family members, the daily "I love you" or goodnight kiss that might seem routine, but actually builds secure attachment. Similarly, the repeated Hail Marys of the Rosary create a rhythm of spiritual security that strengthens family bonds. For families facing particularly difficult trials, serious illness, financial hardship, or painful divisions, Pope Francis recommends what he calls Rosary Novenas, 9 days of intensified prayer focused on specific intentions. This concentrated period of devotion demonstrates perseverance and faith while creating a supportive structure during crisis periods. Many families report experiencing unexpected grace, strength, or resolution following such dedicated prayer practices. The protection of the Rosary extends to marriage itself, the foundation of family life. Pope Francis suggests that couples pray at least a decade together daily, even if the full Rosary seems impractical due to schedules. This shared spiritual moment strengthens marital unity and models faith commitment for children. The Pope particularly recommends this practice for newlyweds, establishing patterns of prayer that will sustain them through inevitable challenges. Some have asked whether non-Catholic family members can participate in this protective practice. Pope Francis responds with characteristic openness, noting that anyone can benefit from contemplative prayer focused on Christ's life. He encourages Catholic family members to invite rather than pressure participation, respecting others' spiritual journeys while making the Rosary available as a resource for unity and protection. The Rosary's protective power expands beyond the immediate family to extended relations, according to Pope Francis. He suggests occasionally gathering with grandparents, cousins, aunts, and uncles for expanded Rosary prayer, strengthening the broader family network. These gatherings can coincide with significant family events, birthdays, anniversaries, or holiday celebrations, adding spiritual dimension to family traditions. One particularly moving testament to the Rosary's protective power comes from Pope Francis's visits to hospitals, prisons, and areas affected by natural disasters. He frequently gives rosaries to those facing extreme challenges, explaining that this simple tool connects them to a worldwide community of prayer. The same protection he recommends for families extends to all human family members experiencing vulnerability or suffering. Pope Francis also addresses how the Rosary protects families from internal threats, not just external challenges. He speaks candidly about how pride, selfishness, materialism, and poor communication can damage family relationships from within. The Rosary, with its focus on humility, sacrifice, simplicity, and love, provides an antidote to these destructive tendencies. Each mystery contemplated becomes a lesson in values that strengthen family integrity. The Holy Father connects the Rosary's protective power to the concepts of mercy and forgiveness, essential for family harmony. He notes that families who pray the Rosary together develop greater capacity for reconciliation because they regularly contemplate Christ's ultimate act of forgiveness on the cross. This spiritual practice creates pathways back to unity when conflicts inevitably arise, protecting the family from the lasting damage unforgiveness can cause. For families concerned about powerful cultural influences on their children, Pope Francis suggests the Rosary as a way to develop critical thinking informed by faith. Rather than simply shielding children from all outside influences, an impossible task in today's connected world, the Rosary helps family members develop internal compasses guided by gospel values. This discernment capacity becomes increasingly valuable as children mature and make independent decisions. The protection of the Rosary also extends to family members' vocational journeys. Pope Francis encourages families to pray specifically for each member's discovery of their unique calling. Whether to marriage, religious life, single dedication, or particular professional paths, this aspect of protection ensures that family members develop according to divine purpose rather than merely following conventional expectations or fleeting desires. Pope Francis often speaks about the family table as the natural gathering place for Rosary prayer when possible. Just as families nourish bodies with food shared at meals, they nourish spirits with prayer shared in the same location. This connection between physical and spiritual sustenance creates a holistic approach to family well-being, protecting members from the fragmentation that characterizes much of modern life. The Rosary's portability makes it an ideal form of protection for traveling family members. Pope Francis recommends sending loved ones on journeys with rosaries as tangible reminders of family prayer support. Whether a student leaving for college, a spouse on business travel, or a family member moving to a distant location, the Rosary creates spiritual connection across physical distance. Many families establish specific times to pray together while apart, knowing that simultaneous devotion creates powerful spiritual bonds. There's scientific support for the Pope's emphasis on family prayer, though he approaches the matter primarily from faith perspective. Research indicates that families who engage in shared spiritual practices report higher levels of cohesion, better communication, and greater resilience during difficult times. The Rosary, with its accessible format and rich tradition, offers precisely the kind of shared practice associated with these positive outcomes. Pope Francis particularly emphasizes the Rosary's role in helping families navigate transitions, those predictable but challenging passages every family experiences. The birth of children, beginning school, adolescence, empty nest periods, retirement, and aging all present unique challenges to family stability. The constancy of Rosary prayer provides continuity through these changes, protecting family identity even as circumstances evolve. The protection afforded by the Rosary isn't limited to Catholic families alone, according to Pope Francis. He speaks of it as a universal spiritual tool, available to anyone seeking connection with divine love. While maintaining its distinctly Catholic character, the Rosary's focus on Christ's life and Mary's faithful response offers wisdom accessible across denominational lines. This inclusive approach extends the Rosary's protective reach beyond expected boundaries. When family members struggle with doubts about faith, a common experience in today's secular environment, Pope Francis suggests continuing the Rosary practice even through questioning periods. He compares it to maintaining family communication even during disagreements, The routine of prayer keeps channels open between the doubting heart and divine revelation, protecting the possibility of deeper understanding when the person becomes receptive again. For families concerned about older children who have stopped practicing faith, Pope Francis offers particular encouragement regarding the Rosary's protective power. He assures parents that no prayer is wasted and that the seeds planted through family rosary devotion continue working in hearts long after visible participation ends. Many adults return to faith practices years later, often citing early family prayer experiences as influences that eventually bore fruit. The physical posture for praying the family rosary matters less than the heart's disposition, according to Pope Francis. While kneeling has traditional significance, he acknowledges the practical realities of family life and suggests flexibility. Some families pray while walking together after dinner. Others gather in a circle on the living room floor. Some incorporate the rosary into bedtime routines with children already tucked in. This adaptability ensures that physical limitations or circumstances don't prevent access to the rosary's protection. Pope Francis often references how the rosary protected his own family during his childhood in Argentina. He recalls his grandmother's faithful example and how she taught him to pray the rosary during difficult national periods and personal family challenges. These memories inform his conviction about the prayer's protective efficacy and add authenticity to his recommendations for today's families. The Holy Father connects the rosary's protection to what theologians call domestic church, the concept that each Christian family forms a miniature version of the broader church. Through the rosary, families participate in the church's prayer life without needing to leave home. This connection strengthens both individual families and the larger community of faith, creating networks of prayer that support and protect one another through mutual intercession. One particularly powerful aspect of the rosary's protection involves healing family histories. Pope Francis speaks compassionately about how many families carry wounds from past generations, patterns of addiction, abuse, abandonment, or other traumas that affect current relationships. The rosary becomes a gentle tool for addressing these historical injuries as family members pray together for healing of ancestral patterns and freedom from inherited spiritual burdens. The protection of the rosary extends even to families experiencing breakdown or division. Pope Francis offers special encouragement to single parents, blended families, and those separated by divorce, suggesting adapted ways to maintain this spiritual practice even when ideal family unity isn't present. The rosary becomes a source of stability amidst restructuring, helping children especially to maintain spiritual moorings during challenging transitions. For families balancing overwhelming schedules, a common contemporary challenge, Pope Francis suggests what he calls moments of rosary, brief periods of prayer incorporated into existing routines. Perhaps a decade prayed during the morning commute, another while preparing dinner, and a third before bed. These prayer moments, though separated by time, collectively form a protective spiritual canopy over the day's activities and demonstrate that prayer needn't be confined to perfect circumstances. The symbolic elements of the rosary hold special significance in the Pope's teaching about family protection. The cross that begins the rosary reminds families of sacrificial love, the willingness to put others' needs before self-interest that forms the foundation of family harmony. The circular arrangement of beads symbolizes the continuity of commitment that protects relationships from temporary difficulties. Each element carries meaning that deepens with contemplation. Pope Francis particularly emphasizes praying the rosary during family celebrations, birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, and other milestone moments. While these occasions typically focus on material expressions through gifts and gatherings, The addition of shared prayer acknowledges the spiritual dimension of development and accomplishment. This practice protects against materialism by balancing external celebration with internal gratitude. The Holy Father also addresses the common challenge of praying the Rosary with very young children or family members with developmental differences. He suggests abbreviated forms, visual aids, and movement-based adaptations that make the prayer accessible to everyone. What matters most is inclusion, not perfection. Even the youngest family members absorb the atmosphere of prayer, receiving its protection before they comprehend its meaning. For families influenced by multiple cultural traditions, Pope Francis notes how the Rosary can incorporate elements honoring diverse heritages. Perhaps a family adds traditional prayers from grandparents' native languages, or includes cultural expressions of Marian devotion familiar to different members. This inclusivity strengthens family identity while maintaining connection to universal church tradition, a balance that protects against both rootlessness and rigidity. The protection of the Rosary extends to family finances, according to Pope Francis. He suggests praying specifically about economic decisions, employment challenges, and resource allocation. This spiritual dimension helps families maintain perspective about material concerns, protecting against both anxiety during shortfalls and excess during abundance. Many families report developing greater generosity and financial wisdom through consistent Rosary prayer about these matters. Pope Francis speaks with special tenderness about the Rosary's protection for families caring for vulnerable members. Whether children with special needs, elderly relatives with declining health, or members suffering chronic conditions. The repetitive, accessible nature of the Rosary makes it available even during hospital vigils, therapy sessions, or caretaking routines. It becomes a source of strength when human resources are depleted by ongoing caregiving demands. The Holy Father acknowledges the difficulty many families experience in establishing and maintaining the Rosary practice he recommends. He offers encouragement for those who try and struggle, suggesting starting with just 1 decade prayed consistently rather than intermittent attempts at the full Rosary. This manageable approach protects against discouragement and builds sustainable spiritual habits that can gradually expand over time. For families concerned about religious persecution or hostility toward faith expression in certain environments, Pope Francis notes the Rosary's discreet nature as a particular advantage. A Rosary can be carried and prayed without drawing attention in situations where more visible religious practices might be problematic. This aspect of the devotion has protected faithful families throughout history during periods of oppression, and continues to offer security in challenging contexts today. The protection offered by the Rosary includes guidance for major family decisions. Pope Francis suggests dedicated Rosary novenas when families face significant choices, relocations, educational options, career changes, or other consequential matters. This practice creates space for spiritual discernment that complements practical considerations, protecting against decisions made solely on material or emotional grounds without reference to deeper values. Pope Francis frequently reminds families that the Rosary's protective power flows not from mechanical recitation, but from the relationship it nurtures with Christ through Mary's perspective. He encourages families to grow in understanding of the mysteries being contemplated, perhaps by reading the corresponding gospel passages together occasionally instead of immediately reciting the prayers. This deepening comprehension enhances the protection received through regular practice. For families where members practice different faiths, Pope Francis offers sensitive guidance about the Rosary. He suggests that Catholic members maintain the devotion while respecting others' traditions, perhaps finding parallel practices where Spiritual sharing becomes possible. This approach protects family unity while maintaining religious integrity, a delicate balance in multi-faith households. The Holy Father specifically addresses how the Rosary can protect adolescents during the turbulent teenage years, when many young people question family values and explore alternative perspectives. He suggests parents maintain the practice even if teens seem uninterested or resistant, while creating space for honest questions and avoiding coercion. Many adults report that their parents' consistent example during these challenging years eventually drew them back to faith practices when making their own family decisions later. Pope Francis connects the Rosary's protection to the development of moral reasoning in children and teenagers. As families contemplate Christ's choices throughout the mysteries, they naturally discuss ethical implications that help younger members develop sound judgment. This formation protects against impulsive decision-making and peer pressure by establishing internal moral frameworks before external challenges arise. The protection of the Rosary extends to family members struggling with addictive behaviors or destructive patterns, according to Pope Francis. He encourages families to persevere in prayer, especially when immediate results aren't visible. Countless recovery testimonies mention family prayer as a sustaining force during rehabilitation processes, even when the struggling individual seemed unreceptive at the time. For families separated by immigration circumstances or international employment, an increasingly common situation, Pope Francis suggests coordinated rosary practices across distances. Perhaps family members in different countries agree to pray at the same time weekly, creating spiritual communion despite physical separation. Technology allows some families to connect virtually during these prayer times, maintaining bonds that protect against the emotional disconnection long distances can cause. Pope Francis speaks about the Rosary's protective role during periods of family conflict with particular wisdom. He suggests that when direct communication becomes difficult, shared prayer creates alternative channels for reconciliation. Even family members in serious disagreement can find common ground in the universal needs for forgiveness, healing, and guidance expressed through the Rosary prayers. The Holy Father addresses how the Rosary protects families from the negative effects of digital distraction, a growing concern for parents worldwide. He suggests that the physical, tangible nature of rosary beads offers a meaningful counterbalance to screen-based activities, helping family members remain grounded in material reality and interpersonal connection. Many families establish technology-free zones and times associated with their rosary practice. Pope Francis connects the Rosary's protective power to its development of contemplative skills, increasingly rare in our fast-paced culture. The ability to slow down, reflect deeply, and maintain focus nourishes mental health in family members of all ages. Research confirms the stress reduction benefits of meditative practices like the Rosary, suggesting that its protection extends to psychological as well as spiritual dimensions of family wellness. For families concerned about societal influences contradicting their values, Pope Francis suggests the Rosary as a daily opportunity to reaffirm core beliefs and commitments. This regular renewal protects family culture from gradual erosion by mainstream alternatives. Children raised with this consistent foundation develop stronger capacity to evaluate external messages critically rather than absorbing them passively. The Pope particularly emphasizes praying the Rosary during times of social unrest or national crisis. He notes how this practice has protected families throughout history during wars, economic depressions, natural disasters, and political upheavals. Beyond addressing immediate concerns, the Rosary reminds families that their ultimate security transcends temporal circumstances, a perspective that fosters resilience during challenging periods. One aspect of the Rosary's protection involves its transmission of salvation history through the mysteries. Pope Francis notes that in cultures where biblical literacy is declining, the Rosary ensures families maintain connection with foundational Christian narratives. This knowledge protects against religious individualism by embedding personal faith within the broader story of God's interaction with humanity across generations. Pope Francis often speaks about the Rosary's ability to protect family prayer from becoming rote or meaningless, a common concern for parents introducing spiritual practices. The combination of physical movement, handling beads, verbal recitation, mental visualization, and spiritual intention engages multiple dimensions of human experience, helping prayer remain vibrant and meaningful. This multisensory approach particularly benefits children who learn through diverse engagement styles. The Holy Father acknowledges that some family members may initially feel awkward or self-conscious about praying the Rosary together. He encourages persistence through this natural discomfort, noting that most meaningful family practices require adjustment periods. Many testimonies describe initial resistance giving way to appreciation as the protective benefits become evident through consistent practice. For families experiencing grief or loss, Pope Francis particularly recommends the Rosary as a source of comfort and protection against despair. The prayer's inclusion of both sorrowful and glorious mysteries reflects the full range of human experience, validating pain while affirming hope. Many grieving families report that the Rosary provided structure during chaotic emotional periods and maintained spiritual connection with deceased loved ones. Pope Francis connects the Rosary's protection to its development of critical virtues within family relationships: patience through repetition, perseverance through consistency, hope through contemplation of the resurrection, and love through meditation on Christ's sacrifice. These qualities strengthen family bonds and prepare members to represent family values effectively in broader community contexts. The Holy Father often emphasizes that the Rosary's protection extends beyond the present moment into future generations. Families who establish this tradition create spiritual legacies that influence descendants they may never meet. This perspective encourages perseverance when immediate results seem limited, recognizing that faithful practice plants seeds with long germination periods and far-reaching consequences. If you're feeling inspired to begin or deepen your family's engagement with the Rosary after hearing Pope Francis's insights, the Holy Father offers simple guidance for getting started. Begin with a single decade, prayed with sincerity, rather than attempting the full Rosary immediately. Focus on creating a welcoming atmosphere that family members associate with peace rather than pressure. Allow the practice to grow organically, as its benefits become apparent through experience. The protection offered through this simple string of beads has sustained countless families through history's greatest challenges. It continues to offer the same spiritual shield today for those willing to take up this practice with sincere hearts. As Pope Francis reminds us, the challenges facing contemporary families may take new forms, but the spiritual remedies retain their potency across generations. Remember that the Rosary's protective power doesn't eliminate all family difficulties. Rather, it provides resources for facing inevitable challenges with faith, hope, and love. Pope Francis emphasizes that protected families aren't perfect families, but communities of imperfect people committed to growing together in grace. This realistic perspective prevents discouragement when problems arise despite faithful prayer. We conclude this exploration of Pope Francis's teaching on how the Rosary protects families. Perhaps you're feeling drawn to this practice yourself. The Holy Father would remind you that beginning is more important than perfecting. Taking those first steps, gathering your family, explaining the intention, and praying even a single decade together initiates the protective benefits he describes so passionately. If you believe in the power of prayer, share this message and write Amen in the comments. Let others discover how this simple practice, recommended by Pope Francis, can transform their family life and create a legacy of faith for generations to come. The rosary beads may be humble, but when held with faith, they connect our homes to heaven's protection in ways that transcend understanding, yet transform daily reality. With faith, the impossible becomes possible, and with a rosary in hand, guided by Pope Francis's wisdom, your family can experience protection that no worldly security could ever provide.